Hello everyone, my name is Lowko and welcome to a new game of StarCraft II Heart of the Swarm. Today we're gonna do a little bit of a game analysis between a game that I played... Actually, I think it's 2 or 3 days ago, I'm not completely certain on it. But it was a really good Zerg vs Zerg that I played versus a guy named RorO. Now, during the game, I wasn't really sure if this was like the real RorO or whatever, because, you know, there's this Korean player that is really good at the video game. And he basically is called RorO, and I played this guy and I was like, okay, you know, his name is Brute War, you know, can't really be the real RorO, right? But turns out this guy is actually ranked with over 2,000 points on the European ladder in Master League, and that's basically higher than most Grandmasters are having right now on the European server. So I'm still not completely sure if this is the real RorO. I actually kind of doubt it. But I was still very surprised that this guy is at the very least like a top 100 in Europe right at this moment in the game of StarCraft II. However, it's going to be a Zerg vs Zerg on the map Belgian Vestige. Let me actually check if my music is on. It was not, so there we go. And yeah, this was a really good CVZ that I played, so let's do a little bit of game analysis on it. So this game, we are going to watch it completely through my vision of view, and I'm going to be talking about the things that I was doing while playing the game, and the things that I was thinking about while playing the game, so you might maybe learn a little bit from the things that are going on inside my head while playing and all that kind of jazz. So in this specific game, I actually open up with a hatchery first. Now that is actually already the first thing that you have to realize that is fairly risky. Going for a hatchery first basically puts you behind versus everything that is called a 10 pool or a 9 pool or an 8 pool or anything earlier than that, because you pretty much just straight up lose unless you have like godlike micro, which basically nobody has except for a very few players. So I usually tend to not go hatchery first in this game. I felt a little bit ballsy apparently because I also go for a gas geyser before throwing up my spawning pool, which is obviously going to be way risky, but yeah, it doesn't really matter that much unless you're already going, or if you're going for a hatch first already, it doesn't really matter if you're gonna follow it up with a gas, because you would lose to a 10 pool either way. So here we go, I'm going for a hatchery, into a gas geyser, into a spawning pool. Now I'm having my first overlord across the map already, and I'm going to be checking out what my opponent was up to. So I check, oh, right here, the hatchery is going down. Turns out that is actually a pool into an expansion sort of play, as we can already see on the production tab. But of course I didn't know that up until the point that I scouted it with my overlord. So I know, at this point, my opponent will probably have his Zerglings out a little bit earlier than mine. However, I will have Zergling speed earlier, because he will most likely go for a pool, into a hatchery, into a gas geyser. And since I went for a hatch, into a gas, into a pool, it means that my Zergling speed will just straight up finish earlier than him. So that opens up a little bit of a timing window that I can try and use if I really want to. Now obviously I don't have to, but you know, it's nice to keep in mind either way. If I see a lot of Zerglings move out right now, I will be able to defend that quite easily, just knowing that my Zergling speed will be earlier. So I did decide to pull 2 drones out of gas. I'm going to be starting my double queening, and I'm also going to start more and more drones. Don't really care too much about making any units just yet, because I know that my, you know, I haven't seen anything move out just yet with my overlord, so I keep taking a look at the minimap, and now there's probably not going to be that much aggression, so I can sort of play it pretty safe. Now I'm going to make pretty much only drones for the time being. I want to play it very safe, and I want to play a little bit of aggressive in this game, because I already went pretty greedy. It's worth getting a little bit of aggression done as well. So I am going to plan to do a little bit of aggression, but of course I did pull 2 drones out of gas. Don't want him to scout that, so I decided to put the drones back in gas, and he will be able to click on the gas guys right now, see that I've been mining it, and he probably doesn't expect that my Zergling speed is going to be that early, considering that I actually wasn't mining for a long time from it. So here we go, going to once again pull my drones off gas, and with my first larvae that are going to be available in a little bit, I'm going to make those into a whole round of Zerglings. Now those Zerglings are going to be used offensively. So I don't really need to go all in with that. I don't really need to do too much damage with that either. Just need to make sure that I do at least a little bit. And oftentimes you can actually win the game straight up right here. So here we go, I'm making 24 Zerglings. The only thing that I'm really looking for is to force at least that many Zerglings also out of my opponent. And I can choose to drone up behind this. Now, it's up to me right now. I can actually decide whether or not I want to go for an all-in right now, or if I want to go for a economic follow-up. But considering that I saw that his bailing nest is finishing up just barely, and he's having quite a lot of queens, I thought, oh, maybe I can do a lot more damage. But here we go, he's actually going to go for a full wall-in, which he just barely gets down. And I do manage to get a few Zergs in the main, and I see, oh shit, my opponent's actually already going for an expansion. So as you can see on the production tab, I'm going to follow this up with more drones, since I probably will not be able to break the front of this this Zerg base anyway. But also considering that my opponent is going for a really quick lair, he probably won't be able to do any aggression whatsoever. So I'm pretty much free to only make drones. Now I'm going to follow this up with a lair of myself while dealing a little bit of aggression with my opponent. I probably won't be able to get into that. But here we go. I actually do manage to get a bunch of Zerglings into the natural. Now I don't really want to fight in the natural since there's queens and spine crawlers. So I do manage to get a bunch of links in the main base. We'll be able to actually also sneak 2 Zerglings right there to the bottom, morphing down into Baneling right away. Of course you can two-shot drones with any sort of double Baneling hit. So you just need to make sure that if you manage to do it, and you manage to sneak in 2 Banelings like that, it can do you a whole lot of damage. So here we go. Going to be working with my 2 Banelings that my opponent does not know about, but he does react quite in time. Do manage to blow up quite a nice little bit of Banelings right there, or drones right there, and I do manage to kill 11 workers in total. Now if you take a look at the income tab right now, even though I did a lot of aggression, and even though I forced a lot of opponents, and even though I made a lot of Zerglings, I'm still quite a little bit ahead in economy. And those 11 drone skills that I got didn't even really do that. But just the sheer amount of units that are forced out of him, and just the sheer defensive position, the defensive push that my opponent is in right now, basically made it worthwhile for me already. Now obviously I'm at quite a little bit of an economic advantage right now, so I do decide to go for a little bit of a Mutalisk follow-up. I'm already getting my lair up, or my 3rd base up as well, and I have an Overlord spotting my opponent's 3rd base, so I know that my 3rd base is a lot earlier than his. Now at this point, let's go back to the production tab. Going to getting a lair up, going to make only Zerglings. I don't really want to make any drones because I know that I'm probably already going to be ahead. I probably actually need to play it very safely and try and figure out exactly what my opponent is going up to. Now, considering my opponent is behind, he might go for an all-in, so the only real thing that I'm gonna do right now is make units. If he's gonna go for an all-in, I will have a bigger economy, so I will be able to defend it, only if I make non-stop units. So that's exactly what's going on. Now also, of course, I'm going to use those units a little bit later for denying his 3rd base if I will be able to, and I can maybe even get into the natural or the main base, or pick up a whole lot of creep tumors like this for the time being. So, I don't really know at this point what my opponent is up to. I don't really know why my opponent was going for such a quick lair, because I didn't really see much interesting, but I'm kind of putting him on a roach play right now. Reason being is because if he wanted to go for really quick Mutalisks, they would have already been out, and I simply have not seen them just yet. My own Mutalisks are on the way right now, however, and of course on the production tab we know that my opponent is going for roaches, but I don't know that just yet. Now, considering my opponent is going for roaches, and I haven't seen any sort of Mutalisk just yet from him, I'm not really going to bother with saying on Mutalisk tech too long, because he will just be able to simply outmass me at some point. So I'm already going to throw up my own Roach Warren, already going to throw up my own Evo Chamber, and I'm going to pretty much just drone up from this point. I know that if my opponent wants to do any sort of aggression right now, it's not going to come from a Mutalisk anymore, because that would just be way too late. And considering my opponent doesn't probably want to go for anything like a Hydralisk, because the Hydralisk will just die to Banelings, I am pretty much completely safe to drone up at this very point in the game. So even though I don't have a big army, even though I don't have a gigantic amount of units, my opponent simply will not be able to move out with the Mutalisk that I have. Now meanwhile in the production tab, as you can see, I am getting a whole lot of drones up. Getting a whole lot of them. Just trying to do whatever damage I can with the Mutalisk, but I'm mostly using those to stay very defensive. So here we go, I'm going to be starting my own +1 attack upgrade, which is obviously going to be a little bit later than his. And I'm also going to be starting my road speed really soon, as well as a infestation pit. Now the infestation pit might be a little bit confusing, but the reason for the infestation pit is that infestors actually are the counter to Mutalisk. So my opponent is most likely going for Mutalisk himself. And the counter to infestors again is going to be swarm hosts. Swarm hosts are actually insanely good versus infestors, just because they do a lot of damage versus them. And so that's the reason why I'm already getting my infestation pit. So my goal right now is just to contain my opponent on 2 bases for as long as I can. Once again, got an eye on his 3rd base, and I'm just going to try and make a big army of roaches and swarm hosts. Now the Mutalisks that I do have, obviously don't want to sacrifice them, that would be kind of a waste, but I'm really not going to worry too much about them anymore. Not going to add any new ones to them at all. Now once again, getting the cancel on that base, also managing to pick up a queen right there, just because my opponent is not getting the creep that he wanted to, because I actually managed to kill a bunch of them. And at this point, as you can see on the production tab, I'm going to start my swarm host production. Also going to start a few roaches, going to start my locust upgrade, my roach speed upgrade, and all the stuff that I really need to pretty much finish off this game. I'm at a firm position right now, and when you think about it, my opponent has been on 2 bases, I've been on 3 bases for a long time right now, so that basically effectively means that I'm getting a 50% extra income compared to my opponent. Now what does this mean? It basically means that my opponent will not be able to get a big army up whatsoever. My opponent is basically just having 50% less income than me, which instantly translates into me having a 50% bigger army compared to my opponent. So as long as I stay defensive for the time being, I will most likely be able to quite easily work out this game into a victory. Now I'm going to not allow my opponent to get a gigantic army up, and I also definitely don't want him to get the third up and running for the longest time. So I'm going to be pushing out in a little tiny bit whenever I feel comfortable, whenever I have a solid amount of units, but I'm going to start more and more upgrades for the time being. Now if you look at the supply count right now, it is actually 150 supply versus 90, 160 versus 90 right now, which is obviously going to be in my favor, and that basically all comes forth from me doing a little bit of eco damage in the early part of the game and then taking a really risky, greedy third base, and my opponent was not allowed to take that third base himself. So if you wanted to copy a style like this, just realize that you need to play a little bit greedy with the third base, because the third base is really the thing that gave me a big advantage in this specific game. Now I'm going to be moving across the map. I'm going to position my swarm host in a way that I can easily walk them into his natural and into his third base. So it's going to be in that little spot between his bases. Now I know there's a lot of spines and spores at his third base, and I know that I probably won't be able to attack into that with queens or with roaches and with spine crawlers, but I am able to do just that with swarm hosts. Swarm hosts are absolutely amazing at taking out anything pretty much that is on the ground, so as long as I stay safe, I will be able to do quite a lot. Now here we go, I'm actually managing to pick off a bunch of infestors. He's actually mismicroing them quite heavily, and considering this guy was a really high level player, I actually was a little bit surprised by that. But here we go, my swarm hosts are burrowed right now, my hive is about to be finished, so I can start any sort of viper play that I want really soon as well. I can also start morphing a great aspire if I want, but I just really want to pour on the aggression on my opponent. I just managed to pick off a bunch of infestors, and here we go, he realizes he cannot stop my massive amounts of units, and he GG's out. I want to thank you guys all for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comment section. I will try my best to answer them. Don't forget to smile, and I'll see you in the next game. We'll be playing Zerg from the start, and how the game flow goes. Now in this episode, we're going to be talking about the build order that you sort of want to be going for, and most and foremost, in what order you want to be getting stuff.